r/NoSleep. Posted by u/a_stony_shore. Before you move into a new place, be sure to inspect the attic yourself. By most contemporary measures, I had an idyllic life. There was plenty of routine, to be sure, but it was everything I had ever hoped for: stable job, good wife, a kid and a dog, a house, Mediterranean climate, the works. We even lived way out in suburbia where everyone leaves for work between 7:30 and 7:35 a.m. in a perfectly timed ballet of suburban SUVs and the organic groan of garage doors. There were plenty of challenges though. Despite buying the house drastically below market value, it was a pain to maintain and the pest problems were out of this world. I could never get the lawn to take, for example. The few patches that do take get torn up and eaten by my pests during the night. I had never seen them doing it, but the evidence in the morning was clear. You get what you pay for, I guess. But that hadn't been the biggest problem. It was hard to get a good night's sleep. When we first moved in, we tried to crate our dog Athena downstairs like we did in our last rental, but she just howled pathetically all night long. Then we tried bringing her upstairs and having her sleep in the guest room, but that too was put to an end by her heart-wrenching cries. Finally she ended up actually in our bed, and only then would she quiet down. And then there was my son, Logan. It seemed like everything Logan learned about sleep training went right out the window when we moved into this house a few months back. Where he used to be comfortable in his own room and in his own bed, he started fighting me every time we do our bedtime routine. It really broke my heart how he sobbed pleadingly to sleep in the big bed, our bed, with Athena, toddler for Athena the dog. We tried to compromise and put Athena with him, but that didn't work out, nothing but barking and crying all night. The stress must have gotten to him, we thought. It started to present itself in his imaginative stories. As we were eating breakfast one morning, I asked him something about Paw Patrol, which is his favorite thing, and he just looked up at me and without acknowledging my question and started talking about something else entirely. "I saw a reindeer," he said. "Oh? Was it a big one?" I asked casually, as you do when playing along with a child's flight of fancy. Too loud. It hurt my ears. "Oh no. That's not very nice." "It not nice. I heard her on the roof at night," he added, to which I perked up. "Really? Last night?" I prodded more seriously. "Yes. Too many reindeer. They woke me up and then they scared me." He finished the last sentence as if he were out of breath. "Oh no, how did they scare you?" "They want to push me. They told me they want to push me. They jump on the roof and then they talk to me through the door. Then they scared me. Then I fell asleep." He finished with a clear look of concern on his face. I was concerned too. I didn't like the idea that we were causing him so much stress that he was having nightmares. But I was also worried there might be some truth to it, and that he did hear something. So I, checked the CO detectors, which were, thankfully, working fine. Next I thought to check the attic for any pests that might be rummaging around up there. Attic is kind of a generous term for what it was. Right outside Logan's room there was a panel in the ceiling which, I assumed, led to the attic. I'd never been up there, but I thought the HOA's home inspector I used checked it when I moved in and said everything was fine. I got my ladder, but when I tried to remove the panel it wouldn't budge. I noted the oddity, rapped on the panel and didn't hear anything. I thought to myself how silly I was being. Rather than break anything trying to force that panel open, I decided to let it go. The next day Logan didn't wake me as he normally did. When I went to check on him he was sound asleep and it was incredibly hard to wake him. When he cracked his eyes and saw me though, he smiled. "I tired," he said. "Aw buddy, what's wrong? Are you sick?" "No." He drifted off and he rubbed the sleep from his eyes. "It was too loud at night." I was perplexed. I hadn't heard anything the previous night. "I'm sorry buddy. What was it this time?" "The reindeer kept talking to me all night. I told her to stop but she wouldn't stop." He yawned. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. I tried not to acknowledge how much his stories were starting to bother me, but it was hard to do. Normally his imagination would run wild for a few hours at most before he would forget about it and move on to something else. But he kept coming back to these reindeer. I decided to dust off the old baby monitor and put it to use. That day was uneventful. When I picked Logan up from daycare he almost immediately fell asleep in the car seat. The poor guy was so tired. That night he didn't fight sleep as hard as he had been. After his screams turned to snores I sat in the dark sipping coffee and listened to the monitor feed on my headset. I was jolted suddenly awake by a series of noises on the monitor. Checking the clock it became clear that I must have fallen asleep. I closed my eyes and the world fell away as I tried to listen to the sounds coming from the monitor. The distinctive sound of scrapping flooded over the earbuds, degraded only by the cheap microphone. The rustling of sheets followed and I heard my son respond. "Go away." Opening my eyes I saw the feed and my son was indeed in bed. Had he been sleepwalking while I listened? Panning the camera towards his room's entrance I saw the cracked door illuminated only by the faintest starlight trickling in from the windows. The feed was fuzzy but adequate. "I don't want to." He whined in reply to nothing. Then I heard something, a low murmur perhaps. I turned the volume up to maximum. I heard it now, though almost unidentifiable amongst the hiss of background noise. "Log, time now. It's tea, to hush your, ND welcome. Another life. Finish tasting you. Family. It's. Spread, seed once more. Just need. Lead your father. Attic, just, Ed. Tell him about us one more time. He will do it. That. Do this cleanly." At the same time I saw some shifting in the shadows through the crack in the door. My thoughts finally fell into place and I was sure it wasn't Logan taking to himself. I shot up and rushed through our bedroom door. Athena was already up and growling, though my wife's form was immobile under the covers. As I turned the corner into the hallway a loud crash echoed through the house from the location of the attic panel. As I ran to Logan's room I could see the attic panel was now closed firmly once more. Logan was sitting up in his bed while my wife called out wondering what happened. I scooped him up in my arms and rushed out of the door, with Athena and my wife on my heels. "Get them loaded into the car," I shouted. "And call the cops." She hesitated, confused and bleary-eyed from lack of sleep. "Someone's in the house," I shouted again and this was enough to focus her and she set to getting Logan downstairs. My blood burned like wildfire in a mix of fear and anger. Someone had been in my house, talking to my son right under my own fucking nose. Before I could really process everything I was already moving the ladder into place and preparing to force the ceiling panel open and confront the intruder. It was rash but I was pissed and not thinking clearly. The sound of the garage door opening tore through the quiet house and caused me to jump. The knife from my bedstand was in my hands. I tried to push the panel up but it was firmly shut. Throwing my shoulder into it the panel buckled. With the panel out of the way I could only see what was illuminated by the hallway lights flooding the compact, almost oppressive, crawl space. At first glance everything seemed just as it should. What I took to be insulation covered every visible surface. Its crimson gave the space a warm, lively feel. As I lifted myself partially over the lip of the attic I grabbed onto the nearest brace and to my shock found it to be both warm and wet. A smell I hadn't noticed before hit me. It was a disgusting musk that should have been easily identifiable from anywhere in the house but it was exclusively confined to this tight space. I went to wipe my hands and found them caked with some sort of viscous, red liquid. As I looked around it became clear that every surface was covered with it. I looked around quickly to try and figure out where it was coming from but there was no discernible source. A low groan echoed from the dark. Movement. I couldn't see it clearly at first. A shape came forward and the first details that were visible were two long, contorted, bony growths protruding from a lumpy, hairy mass. It slowly emerged from its refuge. Two forelimbs dragged limply across the floor as it moved forth and I could understand now how my son would have confused it for a reindeer in the darkness. Its torso stretched off into the dark and actually protruded from what I originally thought was insulation. I was wrong about that though, just as I was wrong about suspecting my son's imagination. "It's time." It rasped weakly. My legs were lead weights and my chest was of ice. Wah, what?" I stammered, knife all but forgotten. "The Venus mimics what a fly wants and then it feeds. The tree casts its seed to the wind when the time is right. The chameleon hides as it grows. And even ants keep aphids. That's how it is." It kept moving but I was confused and frozen, halfway in the attic with my legs still perched on the ladder. Details came into focus. The braces and studs weren't wood at all but rather constructions of bone that looked almost like the real thing. The insulation wasn't insulation at all but rather fleshy, sinuous and alive. It was all a massive and obscene lie. It was only a few feet away now. The light helped finally make it known that this was both once a person, and at the same time not what was really talking to me. It was the remnant of some poor woman, decayed and rotted, held at the end of a trunk of muscle and fiber like some twisted Lovecraftian horror. Its antlers were nothing more than two ribs forced upward through the skull and the remnants of black hair dangled down helping make the rotted face unrecognizable. Its arms were arms, and were articulated as such. Its mouth and bloated tongue were likewise manipulated by the massive tendrils spawning from the fleshy red mass lining every surface. I pissed myself as it continued. Then suddenly the world fell away from me. I fell for hours before slamming into the ground with a force that took the wind out of me. My knife was gone. The rotten husk was moving through the gap in the attic now, and Athena's sharp bite into my arm brought me to my senses. Still struggling to breathe, I rolled, and moved. We rushed downstairs, Athena urging me onwards with a strength and vitality I didn't know she had. She was merely 40 pounds, but had managed to knock the ladder out from under me and save my life. The walls were bulging and flexing. Whatever this thing was, it couldn't move or change form very fast, thankfully. "Punch it," I shouted to my wife as we tumbled into the car in disarray, leaving all we owned behind. As we pulled out of the driveway, we hit a roadblock. "What's going on?" My wife choked out in panicked response to the neighbors who were blocking our escape. "Who was up there?" "I can't explain it," I replied. My mind was a mess. The house shook and reeled as whatever was in the attic tried to fully wake. "Hey neighbor. Where you going?" Dan yelled from the roadblock. "You can't be making all that noise this early in the morning. It's against the bylaws we gave you," he challenged, ignoring the odd fact that all the neighbors were arrayed in the middle of the night to prevent our escape. "Just going to the store, Dan," I shouted back. "Can't let you do that. I'm sorry about this. They. He motioned to some of the neighbors and our house. "It's you or me, man. It's my family or yours." "I'm sorry," he said again. "Aphids," I shouted in frustration. "It's time to go, honey. We have to go right through them." "Are you insane? What's going on?" "Daddy, what's going on? Did you make the reindeer go away?" my son asked groggily amid the panic. No. We have to go. If we want to live, we have to go now," I yelled again, and stomped my foot hard down on the gas pedal. The shock caused her to release the brake and we shot forward, running over Dan and a few others. We tore off through the neighborhood and made it out into the city, and relief started to wash over me. We were going to be okay. "Honey, did you call the cops?" I asked after several minutes of silence. She didn't respond to me immediately, nor did her eyes move from the road. "No. I guess everything just happened too fast." Having no plan and no idea what to do, we decided to stay at a hotel. Should we have gone to the cops? Tell them we ran down 6 people, because I thought they were complicit with some horrible creature? Maybe, but to me that made no sense. So I called our realtor. As soon as she picked up, she hissed at me quietly. "What did you do, Tilda?" Having been expecting to be on the offense, I was taken aback but recovered quickly. What do you mean?" "I mean, what did you do? What the hell did you sell us?" I nearly shouted. "Be quiet, you stupid fuck," she hissed again, clearly trying to keep the fact that I called her a secret. "I didn't have a choice. Getting to stay human has a fucking cost you shit. You don't pay that price, they'll take you and replace you with a duplicate, a seed. Then they move, and spread. They couldn't have you, so they took Dan and his family." "You said they," I whispered. "Yes, I did. Because they are all over the goddamn place. Listen, we are going to fix this situation. They already said it's okay for me to list your property, all you have to do is play along and you'll get your money back at least. Just sign the documents I emailed to you and it will all be okay. They will leave you alone. You will get paid. Everyone wins." "No. I won't. I won't take part in this," I started. "Okay, you self-righteous asshole, we will just forge the documents and do it anyway. You can't do anything about it. Of course we'd prefer to do it the easy way, but if you want to, fine. We can manage." But the banks, the auditors, the county, almost all under their thumbs. It's the same in most warm climates too, by the way. Whispering the last part so quietly I could barely hear her. "Just be careful where you sleep. You hear a creak, a pop, anything in the middle of the night." She trailed off before hanging up. So we drove northeast to start new lives and didn't bother stopping along the way. I am thankful for the information she gave us, though I am not sure why she bothered to help. Now that we are settled into the northeast, I won't say where, it does get chilly at night, which I'm not used to. My wife doesn't like it very much, but after telling her what happened she is trying to endure, and I think she believes me. But she's just so much more sensitive to the cold than I ever thought she would be. Stomach cramps and exhaustion mostly. I think my wife's obvious physical distress puts the dog in a mood. Athena avoids her as much as possible. Both Logan and Athena sleep together soundly at night now, so that helps a lot. That helps me sleep. Despite our new lives, I am haunted by unease. Just this morning as we were getting ready for the day, Logan looked at me and asked me a question that has been really bothering me. "Daddy, Reindeer have fur, he said, furrowing his brow. Why did the scary reindeer have mommy's black hair?